Okay, so up next, we're going to jump right into it. We've got an amazing panel discussion coming up for you. This is the panel called Step Up, Drive Change, Don't Apologize. So in this session, we're going to hear from entrepreneurs and leaders who have leveraged market opportunities and encouraged other women to step up. I know this is something a lot of you are doing in your communities as well. So they're going to share tips with us on playing to your strengths, taking on leadership roles that matter, creating a supportive ecosystem, and advancing your career in tech. And I'm sure many more awesome tips throughout their presentation. So first to the stage, I'm going to welcome our very first panelist, Parna Sarkar-Basu. And Parna is a tech evangelist. She serves as a strategic advisor to transformational leaders and tech pioneers and helps them launch and reinvent companies. So a lot of different things that she's working on. She's also a voice for gender inclusivity. She builds initiatives to inspire women in tech and future innovatives, and has been profiled for her work in that regard. So we're very excited to have Parna here with us today. And Parna, how are you feeling?
I'm just feeling great. I have two amazing panelists to speak with, and they are very inspirational. So I'm sure people would love hearing their stories.
Well, great. And so as we say this, we've got Lisa, who's just joined us here on stage. Hi, Lisa. Welcome.
Hello.
So Lisa is the Senior Vice President of Provider of Industry Solutions at NTT Data Services. And so Lisa has more than 30 years experience working in the healthcare services industry with an extensive background in digital innovation, transformation, product commercialization, and sales and marketing, many of which go together when you're doing those big projects. So Lisa, welcome to the stage with us as well.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here, everybody.
And I'm going to introduce our third panelist, who I think we're just waiting for backstage still, but I'll do the intro, and then that way, Parna and Lisa, you can get started. And when Nausheen pops on stage, we'll just add her right in. So Nausheen Moulana is the Chief Technology Officer at Glitech. Nausheen has worked in product development and operations teams, and also has a career over 25 years holding different tech leadership and management roles across industries, including healthcare, like Lisa, also enterprise technology and scientific computing. And so she also is a startup advisor, a speaker, and hosts tech and talent events too. So very excited when Nausheen gets here. Like I said, we'll add her right to the stage. For now, Parna and Lisa, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is so great to be back here. Congratulations to all the winners, the nominees, and everybody who's been making an impact. I'm really so super psyched to be part of this community, and thank you all for joining us today. So while we wait for Nausheen to join, I just wanted to kind of set the stage of what we are hoping to talk about today. So Lisa, Nausheen, and I, we kind of powwowed a little while back to say, you know, we've been hearing so much, a lot of the negatives that has been happening. You know, the pandemic has definitely devastated so many lives and families. But we also have been talking about the impact it has had on women. There's more than 3 million women who have left the workforce. And there are so much challenges that are also that they have to overcome. But it's good to know that there are communities, there are organizations, there are even the government is stepping in to help bring these women back. But today, I really want to focus on the positives. There are so many women who have made a difference. There are many women who have used their platforms to drive change, to bring about inclusivity, more diversity, and so on. And some of them obviously have made the headlines. You know, the founders of Bumble and Spanx and 23andMe. We've had the CEO of NASDAQ, who used a platform to mandate board diversity for the 3,000 plus companies that are listed on NASDAQ. So there are so much there's a lot that's going on, but not everybody makes it to the Fortune list, or they make the news, or they're joining the billionaire club. there are still a lot of women who are making a difference, but they are not necessarily in the spotlight. So that's kind of where I wanted to have Nausheen and Lisa share their journey with us, listen to some of the stuff that they have been doing that is extremely inspiring. So I am so glad that they're both here with us. There's Lisa and Nausheen. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Parna.
Of course, of course. I'm so honored to have you both here. So why don't we get started since we're all here? Lisa, do you want to share a little bit about how you got to where you are today? You've had a very interesting journey. So share that with us, please.
You know, I have had an amazing career. I am so blessed. And I started off my career as a clinical dietitian. I worked in healthcare my entire adult life. And, you know, starting off as a dietitian, even my first job out of an internship was starting a new program, an eating disorder program. And I moved into leadership roles outside of dietetics. I have led business units in hospitals. And then I transitioned to consulting. I transitioned to a healthcare startup. I've led innovation at a large IT really turnaround services company. And now I lead industry solutions, innovation, and strategy for NTT Data, our business unit, our healthcare provider business unit. So it's been an interesting journey, and it allows me to have a very interesting perspective as to how we tackle the challenges in healthcare. That's my vertical. That's where I'm really focused. And, you know, it's fun, and I get to use the skills of asking questions and problem solving in every one of these roles. And that's what I take from each one of these roles that allows me to be successful. It's not my job, but it's those skills that have allowed me to move into those other things.
Very cool. Thank you. Dedication to where you are today. Very awesome. Nausheen, share with us your journey too, please.
Sure. First of all, I do apologize for running a little bit late over here. For some reason, I saw it as 1:30 and not 1:20. I really do apologize.
No worries.
My journey, I think I will just say, goes back to 9th grade, where I fell in love with physics. My physics teacher had a very big influence, and I really fell in love with the electron. And I really wanted to use technology to solve problems. And I, got a degree in electrical engineering, and I was first introduced to computing because I had to work with software and write algorithms. And that's when I really realized the power that technology has to solve problems. But I came at it from a perspective from engineering, not so much in computer science. And what I also learned early in my career is that more than the actual coding aspect of it, I really enjoyed bringing teams together and solve problems. So that's how I forayed into management, though I didn't go in thinking I'd be in management. And what I recognized is that by becoming a manager, you don't suddenly become non-technical. A lot of people think that if you don't code, you're not technical. You just design systems, or you think about technical strategies, and you're thinking about risk to your business, innovation, a lot of different things. And honestly, I found working with people, aligning people, and getting people to do something together is much more challenging than writing code, my personal opinion. And it takes a lot of different things to come together to align and move people in a direction. And I really enjoyed applying technology to solve problems. And I did that in the technical computing space for a very long time, went back to school, got an MBA, and I recognized that I really wanted to be more in a vertical space rather than a horizontal space. And then I left a very stable job and took a risk and went into the startup world, so to speak, and learned a different set of skills. And then I recognized that I really wanted to go into the vertical, like Lisa was saying, and I became very passionate about solving healthcare problems in healthcare through technology. And so I took a step down to get into the healthcare business and recognize building software in healthcare is not very different than in other places, but it does require compliance and different guidelines and regulations that you need to be aware of. And that is where I am right now, from making the move from engineering to also aligning on product and technology and actually building products, which is what I really have enjoyed doing. And that's been my journey so far.
Phenomenal. And it's always interesting to hear how you thought you would be and where you land up, right? So personally, for me, my degree is in world literature and economics. And then I got into the world of technology and I absolutely fell in love with it. And especially like you were saying, Nausheen, the impact of technology, the innovation for good, as we say, we can do so much positive with tech in any industry. And then I quickly realized that a lot of the founders, a lot of the engineers are brilliant, but they don't always understand or realize how to bring their product to market, make it interesting, make it talk about it in a way that will, give them the VC funding, get the interest of the media and what have you. And that's essentially how I got into tech. And then I was extremely proud when I had a seat at the table with like 13 other men sitting around the table. And in the beginning, I was like, wow, this is great, so proud of myself. And then it's like, wait, what's wrong with that picture, right? So that's how I landed up being an advocate for women in tech. So it's very interesting how our career leads us to where we are today. And now, of course, I run my own consulting firm. So it's really interesting. So the pandemic, as we were talking about, has been very challenging for a lot of women. But for the two of you, you've made some great strides. So tell us about how you got to doing what you're doing now and the changes and the transitions that you made during the pandemic. I think it's a pretty fabulous story. Lisa, you want to start?
Sure. I actually made two significant changes in the pandemic. After 30 plus years living in Denver, we moved to Austin, Texas to be close to grandkids. So, that has been amazing to be a few blocks away from grandchildren, seeing them every day. For those of you who are grandparents, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And, it's a beautiful thing to be close to my daughter and family. But we moved when the world was locked down. So it's been challenging leaving a place where, your neighbors and the community. And it's hard to get to know a community when it's, been challenged. So that was one change. And we've made the most of it. We've done what we can. And, we love our new home and what it's becoming. After we made the move, I had a call from a headhunter. And I was in a really good place in my previous organization. I had, I was just in a really good place and I wasn't looking to make a change. But when I heard about this opportunity, I thought, that really sounds interesting. And it feels like a good place to apply my skills. It would expand on what I was currently doing. And so I certainly was open to the conversation. But it was a little bit, it took a lot of time to actually make the decision. It wasn't a rash decision. And, I talked with the team I'd be working with, and really had to think about what it would mean to make that change, because it was early on in the pandemic. Organizations were laying people off. I didn't want to be the last one hired and the first one fired, especially as an executive. In a new role, like, well, we didn't need that role last year. Why did we bring her on? So there was a lot of risk to walk away from something very secure to do something different. But I really felt like it was what I wanted to do. And I made that change then last summer, late in the summer last year. So that was, it was really good. Now, there were challenges within that as well, which I'll talk about. I think we'll get to those things later. But it was a good thing. And so sometimes when you're looking at life and you're looking at security, you're looking at your career, you're wondering, maybe you stayed home and left the workforce and now need to do something different. Don't necessarily look at what you are currently doing. Think about what you like to do, where your skills are strong, and find the right thing for you. And so it can be very scary, but my career looks the way it does because those transitions have all been from one thing to something completely different. So going from a dietitian to leading a peds unit, from being, a director in a hospital to a healthcare quality startup, to leading, like all of those things, I'd never done the job before that I was hired in to do. And so that's the thing, that when you're looking at how do you make transition, focus on, where your strengths are, know what you don't want to do, and certainly don't take that job if you don't have to. I understand sometimes you just have to, but those are some of the things that I would reflect on. But it was scary. I mean, I'm not going to say it wasn't scary to make that transition. And it's been great. Like, I get to pinch myself with the role I have, with the company I have every single day.
Sometimes taking those risks can be very, very rewarding. So I encourage everybody to do that for sure. Nausheen, you two took a big step. You want to share with us?
Yeah, sure. Pick up where Lisa said something interesting, which is like, look at what you want to do, right? I think it's very important. And my journey has been that I was kind of ready and looking. I was 4 years in the role that I was at in healthcare, really enjoyed the company, the mission, but I felt that I wanted to do more. I wanted more of a challenge. I wanted to also be in a position to actually drive the strategy, the product technology strategy. And I also was very interested in developing skills around AI, ML, and security. And so I was just looking for the more, right? At the same time, I had some self-doubt, like, was I ready for the next level, right? And I was like, what would the next level look like for me? So it was going to either be an SVP of product development or a CTO role. And I was like, I'm not so sure, right? I mean, we have this imposter syndrome, like lurking, like, can I do the job? Do I have everything check marked before I make the transition? And then, the pandemic happened, and things you felt like you didn't have that much control, and change is hard. And like, when you don't know if you're in this forever and what have you. But what I did know is that I had to change something. I just felt like not professionally satisfied. I loved my team. I felt like I checked the boxes on what I had taken this role for, but I was personally, professionally not satisfied. So I did the next best thing that I could do. I tried to get market validation. I passively interviewed. Like, when, recruiters call you all the time, then I just was very selective about what I was looking for. At the same time, I was trying to make things work in my current company then, because I had invested, a fair amount of my time to see if I could find the things that could be challenging for me, right? I'm a big believer in trying to not run away from something, but towards something, if you know what I mean. Like, can you make it work where you are, right? And the pandemic is looming. When I did this exercise, I was pleasantly surprised that I got like 2 job offers, like for looking for 2 months. So I knew, like, okay, I have the skills. Now the question is the opportunity the right one? So I tried to make things to see, if I could stay where I was and grow to the next level. And when it began to look like that was not going to work out, then I started, more actively looking. And then I found a job at Glitech to be the chief technology officer and run product and technology strategy, and actually be in healthcare and make outcomes for patients better, and to help the health systems, with better glycemic management practices. But what I really, really was excited about the role was that of bringing transformation and change to the organization, and actually helping it pivot from a clinical solution to a product-led, technology-driven, enterprise product company, like played to my strengths. But the one last thing I'll say is, what really helped me make the move also, ironically, was the timing. I felt that in some weird way, it gave me control, that I could choose to do things despite the craziness. There was a lot I couldn't control. but there was one thing I could control, and that's what I decided to do.
Can I add a couple comments to that, Nausheen? You're spot
Sure.
on. One of the things that you said is that you looked at what you could do and you had to catch yourself so you didn't have to check every box thinking that you're qualified. And as women, that's just, a lot of us are wired like that. And I can tell you that in the jobs when I made those changes, I can still remember the night before I started the role in a health system to lead pediatric business unit. I laid in my bed that night before going, what did I tell them I could do? I was actually very, very scared of what I'm like. I knew I could do it, and it was a new role and there was all these new things. So yeah, you should be a little scared when you make the transition or you're not going to grow. So that's one piece of advice. But you do not have to check the box in experience to go to your next role. Look at the role and focus on what does it take to be successful in that. I know I can plan. I know I'm really good at hiring people. I find I can interview. I interview people well. Even in the organizations that I worked in, departments I didn't work in, people would have, Lisa, just look at this person. I'm like, okay. And there's just this, that's a skill that I have in building teams. And so I can leverage that if I have to grow a team. So think about what you're good at, not what you've done and that you can check a box for. And that's going to stretch you to your next role. And then when you show up for that interview, you're not going to talk about like the specific thing of it, but you're going to talk about how you can do that and what you've done in the past that will help you be successful. So don't get hung up on I've done 50% of this job before. It's time to take a little leap. Nah. Like, you've got the skills, you can do this, you can make the big leap.
Awesome. Can I jump on what she just said for a second?
Please do.
Awesome. I mean, like, Lisa's really, again, like, this really resonates with me. It's like knowing your strengths. I really believe it's very important because I feel like we have a culture that we vector too much on everything that's wrong about us. Like, okay, you have to get better at this, you have to improve on this, but yes, you have to do a few things to get to a level where you're competent, right? But over vectoring on something that's not natural or talent that you have or you can develop, I feel like takes away from how further you can go leveraging your strengths, right? And one thing I learned in my career here is that the leverage to learn ratio when you're looking for any opportunity, right? Whether it's at your current company or you're going to look somewhere else, right? What leverage do you have? Like things that you bring to the table, so to speak. And what are the things you want to learn, challenge yourself to? When you find that right ratio, I feel like that is you want to be at the Goldilocks levels, right? Because if you're constantly learning and you're not leveraging, maybe you'll get overwhelmed, burn out, I don't know. But it's very important to like find your strengths, know what you can leverage and what it is that you're looking to challenge and grow. I just wanted to get that out because Lisa made some really good points here that I was like, okay, I should just like jump in here.
Totally. And now we're just going to keep talking about this because I think this is where women get stuck. This is where women get stuck.
So you're absolutely correct. I think, oftentimes, at least from my experience and what you guys are sharing, we are very scared to take that first step. So for me, I remember the first step of joining a company where they were transitioning and I was coming in to do that pivot. And I said, what do I know about this? And then I learned that that is my strength. And so, but the first time I did that, I was like, oh my God, just like you were saying, what did I get myself into? And since then, I've helped transition so many different companies and in different industries. So you very quickly realize that's your strength. And yes, there might be things and nuances that you have to learn, but because you're good at your core strength is solid, that you can actually add on, or as you were saying, bring in team members who can augment the pieces that you may not be as strong in. So I think that team building, but the confidence in ourselves, I think is the biggest part. And as women, I feel like, we are always questioning ourselves, is that 80-20 rule, or do I have to check every box? But that's never the case for the guys, right? So I'm really happy to hear that we are at a point where we can just jump in and say, okay, we are good at what we do. Let's take that on. And I think those are really good points that you guys made. So as I think, Lisa, you talked about this in the beginning, but I'm sure the path to where you are today, your journey was probably not seamless. I suspect there were some small hurdles here and there that you've had to overcome. What kind of challenges were they? Were they management? Were they teams? And how did you overcome them?
So there are a lot of challenges when you make transition like this. And I had some really great bosses and I had some really bad bosses. And so you've got to learn how to work for both and survive. And so, I mean, that's just the reality of the workplace. When you don't have such a great boss, what you have to do is find someone that'll mentor you in your organization to help you through that. And I had great mentors. So I was able to find that. And they were not even necessarily in the business. Like in the hospital, some of them were just like physicians who were just great human beings, who were great coaches to me and really helped me just to deal with things. So finding a mentor is really going to help you and help you grow. The other thing is when you've got a great boss, I had a fabulous leader I worked for at Health Grades. And he was so amazing when he hired me because they hadn't hired anybody like me. He hired people that had skills he didn't have, and he was not threatened by that. And so that was really awesome to see. And that was an example for me. I'm like, okay, like that is going to drive his success. And he realized that. So he hired, that's really where I learned how to kind of close the gap on some skills and things like that. So had a good leader there, and that definitely helped. And just don't be afraid to do things that are maybe even be on projects that aren't necessarily in your purview. Learn new skills. Like I hadn't done a lot of like budget and things like that, which I didn't really enjoy that, but I needed to have some exposure to that. So I got to do those things in our business unit, even though it wasn't part of my job. I asked for it though. I had to say, hey, I need some practice here. Can I help with this? So I did the annual budget and I got to do that. So sometimes you have to look at those things where you have skill gaps and figure out how to get them along and then really super excel on your current job. But having a mentor, being part of like professional organizations where you network, and probably the key thing that you have to keep in mind is when you make a transition, it can't be ugly. You have to always make that transition, no matter how the situation is. It has to be positive. You can't leave in a huff or storm or burn bridges, because this is a very, very small world. And people don't forget those things. And you may not even realize the impact that would have on your career 10 years later. You just don't know where someone's going to be and the influence that is. So always leave gracefully, always leave really in a, as good as that can be. And so you can have strong references, you can ask for references. So those are some of the things too. But the challenges are what you make of them also. So I would say how you respond to the negative things is always your choice. You can choose to be reactive to it, or you can just make the most of it. But I think having a mentor is a really big piece of it.
Yeah, I think Lisa made some really good points about mentoring and things like that, which I totally agree with. Based on my experiences, I would say for me, some of the challenges that I faced and what helped me overcome them over the course of my career first is really beginning to learn to advocate for myself. For me, I started my career thinking my manager would have my back. I think your managers have good intentions, but they can't be everywhere. And sometimes, from a cultural perspective, you might not be aligned. And so really trying to figure out how, and I come from a culture where when you speak about yourself, it's like you're too proud, you have to be humble and things like that, right? That's great, but it doesn't really work. If you really want to grow in your career or really want to, expand your skill set and do interesting things. So for me, it was beginning to realize that when you do actually do good work, how do you then talk about your accomplishments and to be seen and to have a voice, right? And really, and I think that's why finding those mentors and what I call also building out those relationships are important so other people can advocate for you. But I think you really need to find a way to own that and always connect it to your business deliverables, right? It's not tooting your own horn, but really trying to connect the dots for people, if you will. I think that's pretty important. Another thing I would say is figuring out that, knowing that it is important to be vulnerable and authentic. And the reason why I say this is that I had to do a very, very complex project earlier on, building a compiler for a product called MATLAB. And I'm not a computer science compiler person, but I was given this project, which I was very honored to take on. But what I quickly realized was that it was challenging. I couldn't do everything, and it was very unlike other projects I had worked on. Without involving others and leveraging my team, I couldn't really get it done. And I also had to explain why it would take long. And it was okay for me to say, I had to admit to myself that I was not going to be a superwoman, solve all these problems, to then actually let other people in and leverage other people for their strengths and bring the team together and know that it's okay as a manager, as a leader, you don't have all the answers, but know what your strength is and bring it to the table. And I believe really finding your authentic self is very important. It lets you, at least lets me sleep well at night and not have to know that I have to solve everything. But to get there, it was a journey for me to recognize that I couldn't do it all by myself. And then the component that Lisa already touched upon is that continuous learning, right? I didn't know anything about compilers, so I went back. I did an auditing at the Harvard Extension School on compiler technology. Again, I didn't want to become a compiler expert, but I wanted to know enough to ask the questions of the teams working on it so I could mitigate risk to the project and I could kind of understand what needs to happen. So I would say, besides everything Lisa said, find your authentic self, be willing to take help where you need it, and be your best advocate. That's kind of the things that have helped me.
Nausheen, that getting feedback. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and speaking of mentors, why don't we take a question? So it's coming from Rena. She's referring to Indra Nooyi's book. She was a former CEO of PepsiCo and one of my role models. She's phenomenal. And she had said in her book that mentors find you and mentors hitch their wagon to you. What are your thoughts on that? And do you have an opinion?
I've actually found people just accidentally, on an airplane, just through a conversation, I'll help you, I'll help you. So part of it is looking at where, you might seek out where a mentor might come from. It actually not necessarily maybe be in your organization. I look at my career, there were times when people sought me out, they saw what I was doing, and they really wanted to help me. I had some great mentors that helped develop my career. Other times, I've had to seek them out. So I think it's a balance, and it just depends on where you're at and where the organization, the culture. Is there a culture of helping and mentoring? But I still think it's on you to step out there and put yourself out there. And if you do that, the people that you meet are going to want to connect to you, and they'll help you in your career without even asking.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I do think it's a two-way relationship, and I've seen it both ways. I mean, my personal experience has been me, I think later in my career seeking mentors. When I first had my mentors, when I first started my job, I didn't know that's what they were called. I had like these, I felt like they were like my guides or coaches, but like, you know, they were not my managers. And mentors do open doors. I definitely did experience it myself. Among my early mentors was somebody who actually showed me the ropes of system design and building really solid software. And but I also put in the energy, like I was like very willing to learn and be coached. And then he recommended me for projects that I would, like my manager wasn't even aware of, right? So I got visibility into a lot of different works, not in my group because of who my mentor was, right? And he saw the kind of work I was capable of doing. Later on in my career, I have sought people out, and like, you know, I would say don't take anything too seriously. Sometimes you have to connect, right? People are busy. But when I did connect with people, I'd say like, you know, I really want to learn how to do this, or like, would you help me? This is a challenge I have right now. And some of my mentors over time have become my personal board of advisors, is what I call them. So they're invested in me, and if I can reach out to them and say, hey, I have this challenge, or I'm considering this opportunity. What do you think? Or if they hear something, they'll say like, hey, you should check that one out, right? Like whatever it is. But I think you get back what you put into that relationship. So it's not like, hey, I have a mentor, I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I know we are almost out of time. We have 2 minutes. So there is a concern, I would say, among a lot of us women, that because of the push for diversity, because of, you know, wanting to hire more women and women of color and so on, that people are either getting hired or getting a promotion, what they're calling a fake promotion. So that they're getting promoted, let's say, to a VP, but they're not getting the title, they're not getting the package that would normally come with it, but the company wants to show that they have women in the leadership team. How do you feel that, you know, how should women question their role or their promotions once that's happening, especially if it's coming without the accompanying package?
Wow, that's a great question. I think we've probably all seen some weird things happening over the last couple of years. And I think it's unfortunate because that you know, the devaluing of women just continues when corporations walk through the motions, but don't necessarily, there's no equality there. So I would probably take the title. I'm just off the top of my head, I'd probably take the title, and I would probably look for a new job that's actually going to value and give me the role that I'm capable of doing. And having the title will help you get your next role. So don't get me wrong. If you get a promotion, that's great. But while you're in that role, you've got to do what you can do to demonstrate your capability in that role, and you know, expand your experience so you can move to the next role. So I also think there's something to be said about challenging the promotion without having the equality conversation. But again, culturally, that's disappointing to hear those things are still happening.
Yeah. Nausheen, we're almost out of time. So
yeah, it's just unfortunate. But I would say for me, I want to be recognized for my talent and my skills first than anything else, because I'm worth it. Like, you know, I don't want to apologize and say like, you know, hand me down something. So that honestly pisses me off. But having said that, you know, I think as long as we can take control and present ourselves and not worry, yes, we'll have moments of doubt, but that's okay. We're human, right? But we have ways to go before we can get to a place where I think we are recognized for what we bring to the table. But we all have to do it together.
Yes.
Totally agree. So this has been an amazing conversation. Nausheen and Lisa, continue to step up, continue to drive change. And as I say to everybody, do not apologize. You're all making a change for yourself and for those of us coming after us. So thank you again for joining us. Really appreciate your time. If you have any questions or you want to further continue the conversation, do reach out to us via LinkedIn. We would love to hear what you're thinking. And enjoy the rest of the show. Over to you, Margot.
Thank you, Parna. Thanks, Nausheen. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Okay, so what a great panel. I know that I took a lot from that just now, especially around finding your authentic self and just putting it out there. So thank you so much to those panelists.